All right, so today we're going to be tackling Micron Technology.
Oh, Micron.
Yeah, OMIU, if you're following along at home.
Okay.
You sent over a really, really interesting collection of articles, analyses, and reports,
Mm-hmm.
really all kind of centered around the question of, is Micron a buy right now?
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of a head-scratcher, right? Because they're making some pretty big moves in the AI world.
Right.
But then their last earnings report has left some people feeling a little uncertain about them.
Yeah, I can see why.
So let's kind of start by taking a quick look at their recent stock performance, just over the last few weeks or so.
Sure.
They had a pretty significant run-up, starting in late December,
Yeah.
peaking at 105.43 on January 7th.
Oh, wow.
And then it's sort of settled into a range between, let's say, like 90 and 105.
Okay.
Now I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
January 7th kind of stands out there, right?
Yeah, it's a big jump.
So what was going on?
Well, that surge was really tied to their announcement about collaborating with Elon Musk's AI venture.
Oh, right.
The markets just love that news, at least initially.
Yeah, it does seem like anything Musk touches these days just, shoots up in price,
It's true.
at least for a little while.
For a little while.
But then here's where it gets really interesting, is that they had their earnings report on December 18th.
Okay.
And they beat expectations,
Uh-huh.
but then they issued some pretty cautious guidance for the future.
Right. And I think that's kind of where the disconnect lies.
Okay.
You've got good earnings, but the stock actually dipped about 4% on January 10th.
Oh, wow.
Closing at 95.06.
Okay.
So it seems like investors might be focusing more on that cautious guidance
I see.
and what that could mean for, Micron's future growth.
Okay, so even though they're performing well now,
Right.
there's this underlying worry that things might slow down.
Mm,
Does that kind of tie into some of the technical analysis that you were looking at
it does.
from one of the sources?
Yeah, we're seeing kind of some mixed signals there. You've got the 50-day and 200-day moving averages,
Okay.
which are both above the current price.
Uh-huh.
And typically that's considered a sell signal,
Okay.
but those are what we call lagging indicators.
I
So they might not fully reflect the potential impact of,
Right.
Micron's AI moves.
So it's like those long-term indicators could be lagging behind what's actually happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But then you've got the 20-day exponential moving average,
Right.
which is just below the current price.
Right.
Isn't that a buy signal?
It is, yeah, and that suggests some positive momentum in the short term.
Okay.
However, we've got the MACD is showing a bearish signal,
Okay.
and then the RSI is pretty neutral.
Uh-huh.
So, we're not getting a clear picture just from those technical indicators alone.
Yeah. I'm starting to see why some analysts are a little hesitant about them.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about this massive $7 billion investment that they're making in this new AI-focused memory facility in Singapore. Yeah, that's a huge bet on the future of AI.
It is.
It seems like they're really serious about becoming a leader in this space.
I think this goes beyond just riding the AI hype wave.
Okay.
It's really a strategic move to position themselves at the forefront of this rapidly growing market.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the analyst predictions for the AI chip market,
Right.
some estimates suggest that, Micron could capture a significant share of that market,
Oh, wow.
potentially even challenging the dominance of companies like NVIDIA.
That's a bold move.
Yeah, so we've got this interesting tension here, right? Between the short-term uncertainty,
Right.
which is reflected in those mixed technical signals and that cautious guidance, versus this huge long-term potential in the AI market.
Yeah.
This is where it gets tough for investors, right?
Absolutely. Deciding whether to buy, hold, or sell Micron stock
Yeah.
really hinges on how much weight you give to those short-term concerns
Okay.
versus the potential long-term gains.
So how do we start unpacking this dilemma? What are the key kind of bullish and bearish points that we need to think about here?
Okay, let's break it down.
All right, so we've talked about, Micron's stock performance and all this excitement around their AI push.
Right.
But let's not forget their bread and butter, the
Mhm.
memory and storage market.
Right.
And one of the reports you sent over highlighted just how volatile that market can be.
It's true. The memory market is known for being very cyclical.
Yeah.
You have periods of boom and bust driven by, fluctuations in supply and demand.
Right.
So it can be kind of a wild ride for investors.
I can imagine. But it seems like from what I'm seeing in these sources, Micron isn't just passively riding those waves.
Yeah.
They're actually making some interesting moves to try and, navigate those cycles a little more strategically.
Exactly. One key strategy is diversification.
Okay.
Moving beyond just traditional DRAM and NAND chips and pushing into more specialized memory products like high bandwidth memory, which is designed for, really data-intensive applications like AI and machine learning.
So that AI investment is playing a role here too.
Yes.
It's not just, developing AI chips,
Right.
but also the specialized memory that those chips need
Exactly.
to really function at their best.
Precisely. And they're also investing in emerging memory technologies.
Okay.
Like 3D XPoint.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, which boasts, significantly faster speeds and greater endurance than traditional memory.
Interesting.
So it's clear that they're really aiming to be at the forefront of, the next generation of memory technology.
That's a great point. So, if they can successfully position themselves as leaders in these emerging technologies,
Right.
it could give them, a real edge.
It could.
Even with, the inherent kind of volatility of that market.
Right. However, let's not forget the competition.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Micron isn't operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
They face some pretty fierce rivals,
Who are we talking about?
particularly Samsung and SK Hynix.
Yes, those are big names in the memory space.
Big names.
And it seems like they're not just sitting back and watching Micron take the lead in these new areas.
Absolutely. Samsung, with, their massive manufacturing scale and technological expertise, they're a formidable competitor.
Okay.
They're known for being aggressive in adopting new technologies and pushing for market share.
Makes sense. And then there's SK Hynix.
Right.
They're particularly strong in the mobile DRAM market, which is, crucial for smartphones and other portable devices.
Exactly. SK Hynix has carved out a strong niche in that space.
Okay, so Micron needs to be careful about, picking their battles,
Right.
focusing on areas where they can really differentiate themselves.
Exactly, whether that's through, technological innovation, cost effectiveness, or, strategic partnerships.
So even with this big push into AI and emerging memory technologies, they can't afford to ignore their core business and the competitive landscape.
Right. It's about striking a balance.
Okay, that makes sense. But one of the articles you flagged brought up a potential issue, concerns about oversupply in the memory market.
Yeah.
Could that derail Micron's plans even if they're making all the right strategic moves?
It's certainly a risk.
Okay.
Oversupply can lead to a drop in prices, which of course puts pressure on profit margins.
Right.
And that makes investors nervous, as we saw with the reaction to Micron's, cautious guidance.
So even if they're innovating and expanding into new markets, they're still vulnerable to these, these fundamental market forces.
They are.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Indeed. And we can't overlook geopolitical risks.
Like what?
Things like trade tensions and tariffs.
Okay.
Which can disrupt, global supply chains.
Yeah.
And really impact Micron's ability to manufacture and sell its products.
Right.
The semiconductor industry is particularly susceptible to these kinds of disruptions.
It sounds like there are a lot of external factors that could affect Micron's success.
Yes.
Even if they execute their internal strategy perfectly.
Right.
It's a reminder that investing in any company means understanding not just the company itself, but also the broader context in which it operates.
And that includes looking at macroeconomic trends, which can have a huge impact on companies like Micron.
I'm curious, what kind of macroeconomic factors are we talking about here? And how might they impact Micron's prospects?
Well, think about things like interest rates, inflation, and overall economic growth. These can have a huge ripple effect on a company like Micron. For example, if interest rates rise, it becomes more expensive for companies to borrow money, potentially slowing down investments in new technology and infrastructure that could impact demand for Micron's memory and storage products.
That makes sense. Companies might hold back on, upgrading their data.
Yes, exactly.
Or investing in new AI projects if their borrowing costs suddenly go way up.
Right. And then there's inflation. If inflation stays high, it can erode consumer purchasing power. People might delay buying new phones, laptops, or other electronics that rely on Micron's chips.
So Micron's kind of caught in the crosshairs.
In a way, yes.
Of these broader economic forces. Even if their products are in high demand, their success could be limited by factors outside their control.
That's the reality for any company operating in a global market.
Right.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Micron is also well positioned to benefit from positive macroeconomic trends.
Okay, how so?
Well, if we see a strong economic recovery, for example, that could translate into increased business investment and consumer spending, boosting demand for Micron's products.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
The same forces that could hurt them could also help them
Exactly.
if things shift in their favor.
It all comes down to understanding both the company-specific factors and the broader economic context.
Got it.
By considering both, investors can make more informed decisions about whether Micron is a good fit for their portfolio.
All right, so let's do a quick recap here.
Sure.
We've gone over Micron's recent stock performance, their big push into AI, their position in the memory market.
Yes, very dynamic.
Yeah, and all the kind of moving pieces there.
We talked about the technical indicators, which paint a somewhat mixed picture. And we discussed the competitive landscape.
Yeah, Samsung and SK Hynix.
Huge players.
Huge players.
And of course, we can't forget about those macroeconomic trends.
Right, which could have a big impact.
Big impact.
So, as we wrap up here, what's the final verdict? Is Micron a buy, a hold, or a sell?
As always, I can't offer any specific financial advice.
Of course.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you a solid framework for making your own informed decision.
It definitely has for me.
Good.
Any final thoughts or key takeaways you want to leave our listener with?
I would say pay close attention to Micron's upcoming earnings reports.
See if their guidance aligns with their ambitious plans, and if they're making progress in key areas like AI and emerging memory technologies.
Good advice. And of course, keep an eye on those macroeconomic trends we discussed.
Absolutely.
Interest rates, inflation, economic growth, all that.
Big factors. They have a big impact.
The semiconductor industry is closely tied to the global economy.
Right.
So understanding those broader trends is crucial.
Well, I think our listener is well equipped now.
I agree.
To continue their research and make a decision that aligns with, their own investment goals and risk tolerance.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure diving deep into Micron technology with you today.
The pleasure was all ours.
Yeah.
And remember, dear listener, whenever you're ready for another deep dive, just send over your sources and we'll be here to guide you through them. Until next time, happy investing.